What is up? This is going to be a video I'm going to be making, breaking down one of the most basic of basic overviews of drafting and what you might want to be looking out for on draft day, now a week away, reminder. And this is just going to be a video because I know a lot of people in this draft haven't drafted before, so it can be a little intimidating looking at that big list of hundreds and hundreds of Pokemon and not really knowing what to look out for. So, this is going to be a quick video looking at synergy, what that means, and how you might want to be on the lookout for mons that work well together, so on draft day, you're not running around like a fish with its head cut off. A couple quick reminders before we get into this. These are not going to be the end-all, be-all rules. These are things you should probably look out for, but every team is different. You know, these aren't going to hold fast true every time, so just keep that in mind. Also, these slides are going to be pretty text-heavy and dense, and I'm not going to be reading straight from them. I just want them to be there just in case someone wanted to go back and read these slides. No, I want them to have all the information all down in one place. But obviously, if you take a look at some of these slides, like let's look at this, or like this one, sneak peek. They're pretty text dense, some of them, and I don't think you want me to sit here and read verbatim every slide. I definitely don't want to. So it's going to be more of me talking on the matter. And if you want to go back and you want to read these, or you want to read these as I'm doing it, as a nice little walkthrough, you know, to help you focus or get it down more, feel free to do so. But without further ado, apologies, we're going to be talking about synergy. What that means specifically between 2 or 3 Pokemon, you know, in these cores. So, we're going to be breaking this down into a couple of concepts here. Our first concept is going to be breaking for each other. Is going to be a concept for 2 offensive Pokemon. So, our example we have here is Magnezone and Latios. What does this have to do with breaking for each other? Well, Magnezone, as you may not know, specialized in taking down steel types, and Latios, newly buffed this generation, has a very powerful psychic stab, more powerful than most psychic stabs, and one of the most powerful dragon stabs in the game, meaning that even fairies have a hard time just sitting there and tanking this thing, meaning that steel types really are one of its greatest weaknesses. Thus, Magnezone, specializing in trapping these steel types, makes a very good combo with Latios, who's one of the people who's very easily able to take advantage of this. So, this is going to be a concept in offense called breaking for each other. This is when you have 2 mons who have different offensive strengths, and those offensive strengths are able to cover the offensive weaknesses of the other. So, when you have 2 offensive Pokemon like this, they're able to weaken the walls that the other might not really want to face down. So, in this case, it's a little more direct. We're going to take an example of this concept in a game. Here we have, we're going to be taking a peek at this Rillaboom specifically on the side of Chirogenis. And if you take a look on the other side of Lexus, he has this Okidogi and this Talonflame. Now, these are both fantastic answers into Rillaboom. It means he won't really be able to get a sweep off if they're alive. You know, they're going to be great switch-ins. So, how does Chirogenis maneuver around this? He has his teammates break up holes that open up and enable this Rillaboom. First of all, we see a fantastic, unorthodox Psychic. You usually don't see that move. Immediately takes down Okidogi. And now this Rillaboom looks a lot better. And if we skip ahead a little, we're going to see Iron Valiant come in, eat this Will-O-Wisp, and then another very unexpected move. Don't see this a whole lot. Destiny Bond comes up, and now this Gengar and this Iron Valiant have very successfully opened up the correct holes to enable this Rillaboom to take this game. As we're going to see here, this Rillaboom is going to come out soon. Yeah, here. And he's just going to be able to click Wood Hammer. And that's just going to be that. Thanks to his teammates enabling and taking down the right walls here, Rillaboom was able to come in and just click buttons until the game ends. I have another example here. It can be a little less direct than that, but this is also a pretty good example of this, I think. So we're going to be looking at the Florges on the side of Vaughn here. And if you notice this Florges and you look on the other side, Mystic's only really good tool to deal with this Terra Ground Florges is going to be this Screamtail. If this Screamtail is ever to go down, then Florges is going to be able to Terra and Calm Mind and pretty much win the game on the spot. So, with that in mind, how does Vaughn play this? Throughout this game, he's just looking to get damage on this Screamtail and just get him as low as possible. You know, keep pressuring him and just make sure that he doesn't get the chance to stick around and mess with his Florges. Because if he can take care of this, he doesn't go for more boosts. He's playing around this Encore. He just wants damage on this. It's forced out, and we're going to see later. It comes back out on this Quackable. Its Swords Dance is up and threatens to kill with Dazzling Gleam. Now, Vaughn could switch out here. He has a very healthy Treads. It's not going to be doing anything to this Treads. And his Quackable is not going to be able to fully take down this Screamtail in one shot, even at +2. But Vaughn instead elects to stay in and just value as much damage on this Screamtail as possible. Very well recognized from Vaughn to know that if this goes down, Florges will just win on the spot. And he opts to just keep up the pressure here. Really doesn't want to let this heal. Just stays in. Now it's technically out of Spike's range, but not really long for this world. Just eats a U-turn and dies. And now we're going to see this Florges come in. And as I just said, once this Screamtail goes down, absolutely nothing is able to stop this Calm Mind Florges from winning the game. And we're going to see it doesn't have to switch out for the rest of the game. It's just over. So that is an example of breaking holes for your partners. Alright? It doesn't have to be direct like the first example. It can be something you recognize in-game, but the point is, when you're drafting, you should be on the lookout for things that do that well for each other. Something like Gengar threatens things that Rillaboom doesn't really like really well. Something like Quackable also does that fairly well for something like Florges. You know, they hit two different things, and they're able to complement their offense well. So, on to our next concept here. This is going to be enabling your offense with defense. So, obviously, even if you have a very strong, very powerful Mon like Darkrai, they're not going to be able to outspeed everything. You know, eventually they're going to come across a very strong Prio move, or they're going to be threatened out by a faster Mon or a Mon with a Scarf, so on. They're going to be able to. They're going to be forced out by something, and once they are, you might want to have one of these defensive backbones to fall back onto. Hopefully, something that complements the typing well and is able to eat whatever strong moves being thrown at it. For this example, lines up pretty well. Amoonguss is very easily able to tank any fighting moves or any fairy moves that Darkrai might be scared of, and it's just overall a nice little complement, because Darkrai not going to be able to do it all on its own. It's going to be forced out eventually, and when it does, Amoonguss is going to be there to enable that offense and eventually get a free turn back in for Darkrai to come back in and wreak havoc. So for that example here, I have one Sir Grimella Styles facing off against Shamark. Here we go. And we're going to see this Thundurus come in very early in the game and kind of put Grimella on the back foot. Here he comes, and now he's just going to be tearing off a storm. He doesn't really give anything a chance to switch in here, though he's going to have to be pivoting around his defense for a while against this very scary Tornadus. And eventually, Amoonguss is able to switch in and put it to sleep. And what happens when Amoonguss is able to get that free turn? His offense is able to be resumed. He gets his Basque Legion back in. You know, he gets a nice little chunk. He gets Landorus back in. And now he's able to resume that offense because he had that defensive backbone to fall back on. So, that's a nice little bit of synergy that you can look to draft or covering the defensive weakness of your offensive Pokemon. But we can also take this concept one step further. We can look at covering your defensive weaknesses. This is more of, hey, my defensive wall, he's very powerful, but guess what? They can't really do everything on their own. Every defensive wall is going to have their own weaknesses, you know, some more than others. But hey. So, when that happens, they're faced off against, say, Galarian Slowking. He's threatened by an Earthquake. Of course, one of the most infamous examples, Zapdos is there to come in, eat the Earthquake, maybe even eat that knockoff, return with the Static, and just complement, be able to switch into anything that threatens the first wall. Another great example of this is Blissey Dondozo. You know, Blissey kind of a catch-all, eats any special attack. Dondozo not quite the same for physical attacks, but still extremely physically bulky, meaning that they're gonna be able to switch in for each other very well and very often. So that means that typically, if you're just threatening like one kind of move, that they're going to be able to switch in for each other pretty well. Now this isn't like a steadfast rule, like a mixed attacker or someone with really good coverage might be able to break this core. You know, something with very specific coverage, something with Earthquake plus Ice coverage. You know, like a Mamoswine could be very threatening to this Zapdos Galarian Slowking core. But I mean, for the most part, they're going to be able to cover each other's weaknesses, and that's also where you can start to plan your third or the fourth Mons on your team to cover these scenarios where these two Mons won't be able to catch all. So for this example, obviously, just talk about that Blissey Dondozo. Who else can I bring up as an example other than Holmesy? So we're going to see here that his X-Drill is scared out here by this Iron Moth. Blissey, of course, comes right out to deal with it. Nothing too scary for it, but here comes Hitmontop. Gonna be pretty scary. Doesn't want to eat this close combat, so of course Dondozo comes in and eats that close combat right up, and that is exactly what I'm talking about. Blissey is able to come in, deal with the special threats, and when something like a strong physical fighting type comes in, Dondozo is able to switch in right for it and cover up for that Blissey's weaknesses. So that's the kind of synergy I'm talking about when I'm talking about covering for each other's defensive weaknesses. This one isn't really too hard to understand, so once you see it in action, I think it clicks pretty well. Lastly, not going to talk about this one too long, but figured I would give it a mention. Direct synergy. This is going to be things like your weather synergy, so things like Swift Swim, or things like, your fast fire attackers pairing with Sun, obviously. Terrains, so things like Heatran being drafted with Grassy Terrain, or Armarouge being drafted in Psychic Terrain. These are both very good combos that can enable these Pokemon very well. Obviously, this also kind of ties into ability combos. Things like Electric Terrain plus the Quark Drive Pokemon. A very good ability combo right there. Things like Unburden, this also applies to things like Regenerator Core, I would call an ability combo. A Magic Bounce Pokemon comboing with a Stealth Rock's weak Pokemon could be a very good combo there. So these are just things that you might want to look out for. You know, you're not going to be building a team around most of those, besides maybe weather. But if you want a combo of like two mons that work well together, it's also like the small things like that that help teams a lot and pushes them into the next level. So it's going to be a quick video there. Didn't want to make this too long, but I thought I just want to get this out there just so that, you know, draft is only a week away. I would start cementing some of your draft plans if you haven't, because, I mean, there's not too much time left, especially if you haven't really thought about what you're going to be drafting. You might want to get on that. So, it's going to be all from me. Thank you for watching, and see you on draft day.